Welcome to the Up Podcast, raw real talk on everything young parenting.
From self-care, co-parenting, and family planning, to balancing school, work, relationships, and goals.
Together, we're challenging society's assumptions and building a safe and supportive community for young parents.
One honest conversation at a time. So join us on the journey.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Yup episode. Today we are in for a very special treat. We are doing things a little bit different today, a little different from our usual chat. So feel free to grab your notepads, settle in because class is definitely in session. We are going to be jumping into all things reproductive health, sexual health, and to be super transparent, I'm going to be learning alongside you all. So let's jump into it. As always, I'm Divine.
And I'm Brandy, and you all may recognize our special guest. We had her on in the early days of the podcast. We have had mothers from her Young Mothers Rising program on just a few months ago, and we talk about her all the time. So welcome back, Dr. Mays. We are so excited to have you back and just to have this really special, intimate conversation around all things reproductive health. We put out polls to answer y'all's questions. We have lots of different questions for Dr. Mays. And so this is the time. And even after this, if y'all have questions, please send them to us. We will get them to her. But like Divine said, get your notepad ready, get your popcorn ready, because we are going there.
Hey, everyone. It's so great to be here again. Thank you so much, Divine and Brandy, and to Yup. I'm so honored to be here again with you all and cannot wait to get into all things, like Divine said, reproductive health and justice and information and sexual health, all the questions you all have. So thank you all for having me again.
Of course. And I think we're just gonna jump right into the deep end of the pool. Okay, Dr. May. So we want to just really start us off in thinking about young people, thinking about young parents, thinking about birthing people, postpartum people, people in relationships, single people, all of the young people. And we really want to talk about your thoughts on sexual readiness, your thoughts on what does it mean to be ready to engage in sex? What does it mean to withdraw that readiness? What does it mean to have a healthy relationship with sex and sexuality?
Yeah, I love this. And I really love that we're talking about this. And I also love that we're talking about this on you all's podcast that particularly engages and connects with young people who are pregnant and parenting and young families. Because in general, with adolescents and adolescent health, we don't talk about sexual readiness enough. I don't think we talk about enough in general for anyone, but particularly for young people who might already be engaging in sex. If you have a child, if you're in a relationships, we really are not talking about feeling ready and the importance of feeling ready all the time and every single time we have sex. So I love talking about this, and I talk about it a lot with our young people and our staff and our team about before we even jump into talking about birth control and how to prevent sexually transmitted infections and wearing condoms. We should be talking about, do we feel ready to have sex? And also knowing that our readiness is different from someone else's readiness, and that it is completely healthy and should be a part of us planning to have sex, is thinking about, are we ready? And when we feel ready. And I feel like we haven't talked about this enough for people to even know, but young people and even adults, what that even means. Like, how do I know that I'm ready? How does my body, my person, my feelings tell me that I'm ready for sex? And so it's just really, really important. I talk about an acronym a lot. FRIES. There's this really fun acronym called FRIES. We all love FRIES. That can really help us to think about sexual readiness and the things that we should feel that can help us to know whether we're feeling ready to have sex. So if we talk about FRIES, so 1F, sex should be given freely. And so that means that we should feel like we are consenting to sex without pressure, that no one is pressuring us to have sex with them, that we are not pressuring ourselves to have sex with someone, that it is freely. And so it's a free exchange between us and the person and how we're having sex. Sexual consent is reversible. And so that also means that if we decide that we're having sex now, we can change our mind at any time. And that also means we can change our mind even if we've already had sex with that person in the past. And so the I is informed, so that we are feeling that we are informed about what we're doing. So we've talked about it, and I have the same understanding that you have about the type of sex that we're about to have. We also should feel enthusiastic about having sex. And so we want to make sure that we are, again, not feeling coerced. It is something that we feel like we want to do right now. We're feeling enthusiastic about it. And this sexual consent is also specific. So it means that consenting to some types of sex does not mean that we're consenting to all types of sex. It does not mean that at all. And making sure that we know and that person knows I'm okay with doing this. I'm not okay with doing that. And that can change at any time. So that's around sort of sexual consent, which is also part of sexual readiness. So when we think about how we feel ready, it's like, how do we feel? Right? So when we think about having sex with that person or having sex during that time, how does our body feel about that? Do we feel nervous about it? And are we nervous in a good way nervous? Or are we nervous in a bad way nervous? We feeling scared, kind of nervous. Like, how do we feel? That body check is a really good sign about whether we're feeling ready or not. When we think about that person or having sex with that person, is this something we feel excited about? Does it put a smile on our face? Is it something that feels joyful? Or is it something that feels like, oh, we have to do it, or we're not really sure? Do we feel unsure? And the last thing I'll say is feeling unsure is okay. Feeling unsure may mean that I need more information, or I may need to get to know this person more, or I have some questions. And so feeling unsure is not a bad thing. Feeling unsure is information that our body and is in our soul, our spirit is telling that we need something in order to be able to make a decision for ourselves. And so we always talk with our young people about really leading with sexual readiness, making sure they feel ready. And also, if you have sex and you're not ready, that's okay too, right? So if you have sex, you're like, oh, I thought I was ready, but I really wasn't ready. That's okay. So it's also not a failure. It's not something that we need to blame ourselves or beat ourselves up about. It's also more information to tell us next time, okay, I'm going to get that feeling. I'll know where that feeling came from. So again, this is not about perfectionism or failure. It's really just about honoring how we're feeling about something when it comes to sex.
Thank you so much for that. I never personally heard of that acronym, so we definitely need to get that on the website, Brandy, because I feel like
Yeah.
that will really help young parents, process those feelings when they really don't know where to start. And I really just appreciate you mentioning, informed decision making and giving yourself grace of changing your mind or, going back and forth between decisions. Because as a young adult and young parent myself, I'm super indecisive. And while still, developmentally growing, I'm always changing my mind, changing my values, figuring out, what it is that I want to do. And so I'm kind of curious, at what point does confidence and like self-awareness play in making those independent decision making prompts
Yeah.
for around reproductive health?
Yes, yes. Being indecisive is part of life too. And it also is part of growth. It also and especially during adolescence, adolescence is a time where we are learning to be independent from what we knew when we were growing up, and making and coming into some of our own decisions. And those decisions may be similar to the decisions that we made or how we lived when we were growing up, and some of them might be different. And that's how it's supposed to be, so that we are also creating what feels like our independent adult life as well, which not is not necessarily different from our family life, how we grew up, but some of it might be different. And so that's where so much of that indecision comes from, because we are also getting messages in our bodies about what feels right for us as individuals aside from our parents, aside from our siblings, aside from our friends, what feels right for us. And so often the adolescent and young adult mind, we're thinking about things. We're always thinking about, okay, well, I used to do it that way, but that doesn't feel right. So I want to just say, Divine, I want to, like what you said, like being indecisive, that's also part of it too. And that's part of the learning and the growing. And listening to those decisions and figuring out what feels right. I always, I think that overall in society, we've downplayed feelings so much when it comes to making decisions. And sometimes we've been told that, like, when we feel something, we're making a decision out of feelings. Well, then that's probably not the most mature thing to do. We have to think it through, not feel it through. But our body gives us so much information. Our body gives us so much of the truth, and our mind helps to sort out what the body is feeling. So we definitely want to be taking in the things that our body is feeling, because that's helping us get to the decisions that are truthful for us. So as we think about reproductive health decisions around birth control, around having sex or not having sex, checking in with our bodies and to help to make those decisions are really important. And also knowing that a decision that we made a year ago may not be the right decision for us today, right? So like we make a decision and sometimes without having experienced what happens from that decision. And that's okay, right? So a lot of decisions come from that. It's like, okay, this is what I think I might want to do. I'm kind of feeling that. And so I'm going to try that. And then once we had the experience, it could be like, that didn't really work for me. Or I thought that was going to be different. So I'm going to adjust now my decision making for next time. And that's all a part of learning life and getting to our truth, what is really truthful for us. But we all have to kind of go through those stages. And I feel like we haven't been affirmed enough as young people and as adolescents to go through that decision-making process without making it seem like those are failures or mistakes.
Yeah. I really appreciate you for highlighting just one, the opportunity to change, that we grow and we evolve and we get more information all the time. What we may have made a decision before, and I think anything in life, right? Especially as adolescents, there's a lot of decision, a lot of input from friends and family and peers and things like that. And so as we kind of grow and develop and start to come into ourselves, we start to realize actually maybe that's not something that I'm interested in, or maybe I'm not interested in that way, or maybe I want to explore this thing. So I really appreciate you for highlighting that. But I also really love the nugget of knowing yourself and knowing your body. And I think I talk a lot on here about also being a therapist, and that's something that I also really love. And it's something that we talk about all the time. It's if we, how do we, when we have a tightness in our chest, what is that telling us? When we have a pit in our stomach, what is that telling us? Are we feeling ready? If we're feeling really nervous and uncomfortable and we're having ruminating thoughts for days and days before we, meet up with somebody, what is that telling us? And are we just brushing that feeling off because we've already made a plan? Are we afraid of what rejection might look like? There's so many different kind of avenues that we can look at
That's
with
right.
this. And so I really would love for us to kind of dive in more into just kind of knowing ourselves, knowing our bodies, knowing what our bodies go through, knowing,
Yes.
processes. And so that was really loaded. But
Yes, I love that though.
yeah, it just, I mean,
because
that,
our bodies, to speak to what you're saying, Brandy, our body knows itself. We come in knowing ourselves, and along the way we learn to not trust ourselves. And especially when if you ever work with little children or folks who have children, and especially thinking with our young parents who have children, watch them. They know when they don't like something, right? And it's unedited. It's like if something doesn't taste good, if it doesn't feel good,
Mhm.
if it doesn't look good, if they don't feel right in their clothes, they will tell you, right? And it comes out very quickly and it's not edited. And that is coming from a feeling because our bodies already know itself ourselves. It's what we're taught throughout the years not to trust it or that it's too loud, right? That message is too loud. That message is not going to be received, or you shouldn't feel that way, or you shouldn't really want that, or you shouldn't really like that. And so then we take it in like, oh, I feel that. And almost as soon as we take it in, it gets edited where we're saying, oh, well, I shouldn't really say that, or I shouldn't be so loud, or I shouldn't be so seen, or I should just kind of go along. Right. And so what we try and do a lot at Dream and with talking with our young people is like bringing back that voice to the center and to the forefront and listening to it because your body already knows itself. And that is our knowing and us trusting that we know ourselves. And so that we can feel, so we can, as we go through the world, we can feel like, we can feel confident that when we feel something that we should pause or we should take notice because we trust that voice. We trust that feeling that our bodies always give us when we first show up. Our bodies are always giving us that. We're just taught throughout the years not to trust that voice and those feelings.
Yeah, that's so real. And I think that is such a heavy, underrated just thought because especially for young parents, like you said, Brandy, we're constantly, going off of society norms, all of the judgment and propaganda and just the way of the world thinking. So I think that is super important to highlight, reflecting, checking in with yourself, and trusted people who have your best intentions, because not all those noises need to be internalized, because
Yes.
just no need for it. But kind of changing segues a little bit, still tying into knowing ourselves, knowing our bodies. I would love, in the simplest way you can, because I know this is a lot, can you kind of break down how ovulation and the menstrual cycle process works, and what it is?
Yes, yes. So this is also so important in with knowing our bodies and knowing our the female fertility body, those who have uterus fertility body, and how that works around just our fertility and our body cycles in general. And sometimes as we use our fertility and our body cycles for reproduction. So we know that the fertility in this bodily cycle through puberty is something that's a stage of a life cycle stage. It shows up during certain ages of our life, and that can happen. Some people utilize that for reproduction, and some don't. And so this fertility cycle is something that most individuals who have a uterus and who have ovaries experience. And so it's something that's really important for us to understand. One thing when we talk about the menstrual cycle, so people have probably heard this a lot. The menstrual cycle, the other words are our period. So like kind of around the cycle of our period. So I love to use the word period because I just feel like it's just, I don't know, it's just simpler. And like we all use the word period, but menstrual cycle, and I'm going to say the period cycle, I'm going to use interchangeably. So when I say period cycle, I mean the menstrual cycle. And so our period cycle usually starts around the time of puberty. And so puberty is that time where the body starts to develop from the childhood body into the adulthood body. And so puberty goes through adolescence because adolescence, those teenage years, is the time from childhood to adulthood. Right there in the middle is our teen years, adolescence. And so part of adolescence is puberty. And the kind of the simple term around puberty we think about are the hormones, which are different substances in the body that help the body to develop on the inside and on the outside. So some of the things that we see in puberty on the outside, we can see that sometimes the way the hormones affect our body is one, skin. So we notice that a lot, right? So like often in adolescence, we see it like show up on our skin, where our skin, we see different things on our skin we haven't seen before. We might see little pimples and things like that that show up, and that's because of the way the hormones affect the skin. So I love also that there's just more inclusion around how our skin looks during puberty as well. We see these super cute stars that folks are wearing around on pimples, but also like letting them show too, right? It's just also like a very natural part of life and of growing and development, and it's also part of like body positivity, right? Our bodies and our faces show up the way that they show up, and so being able to embrace that as well. The other thing we can also see is like is how we grow. So you might notice that like we also get taller during that time. So our bodies are actually growing, and there's during this time of puberty. So those are some things we see on the outside. Well, on the inside, it's also, as we relate to the period cycle, our period cycles also, our menstrual cycle is also developing. And so with some of those things, that can happen somewhere between the age 9, 10, 11, 12, depending on the person. Everyone's different. Some as young as 9, some as old as 14 or 15. It really just depends on that person. And so where we have a range, we also know there's a range there. So like we stay away from the word normal, because normal is not a real thing, right? It's just it's what is healthy for you and your body. So we can see that's in younger, around the age 9 up to kind of age 15 is where we can kind of start to see this period cycle develop. And so when we think about our period, the common range of period can last for about 28 days over, if we look at a 30-day cycle. So usually like the month is about 30 days. So if we take like June 1st to June 30th, that full month, our period cycle is usually over about 28 days. And again, that also is that's something that's it's common, but it's not the same for everyone. So that's a range. So I'm going to use 28 days just for it to be simple. Usually the first 14 days of that period cycle is the time where our uterus, which is kind of the lower part of our belly. So if you like look at your belly button and go a little bit lower than that, that's kind of around where the uterus is. Our uterus looks like about the size of an orange. It can be a little bit smaller, like the size of a small apple, depending on our body size and our body type. And so that during those first 14 days is the time where our ovaries, which are kind of attached to the uterus, kind of looks like that, attached to our uterus, they have eggs in them. And so our eggs, so for the for XX chromosome, for like for folks who have a uterus and ovaries, all of the eggs, which is part of one part of reproduction, we are born with all the eggs we're ever going to have in our entire life. And that's thousands, tens of thousands of eggs. And they're all stored in those two ovaries. They're on the side of the uterus. They're all there. And as soon as we're born, if you have XX chromosome, and so that's the chromosomes that have the uterus and ovaries, traditionally called female, we're born with all of our eggs already intact in our ovaries. They're at different sizes and maturities, so they're not all the same size, but they're all there. And so about the first 14 days of our cycle is the time that our egg is becoming what we call mature. So that really means the egg is growing inside the ovary. And so usually there's one egg that grows in the ovary enough during those first 14 days. And so the hormones it's our hormones that are helping that happen. So the first 14 days is really the egg is growing inside the ovary and it's getting ready to come out of the ovary for reproduction, to be fertilized. So that's our first 14 days. After those 14 days, the hormones have risen enough in the body to the point where it tells the ovary that the egg is now mature enough for it to come out of the ovary and come into the uterus and wait for something we call to be fertilized. So and so when that happens, that happens over the course of about 2 days, and that's called ovulation. So ovulation is when the egg comes out of the ovary and it sits and it waits in the uterus. It could wait at other places, but we're going to talk about the uterus for now. So like traditionally it sits and it waits in the uterus and it stays there for about 2 days. So that happens for about 2 days, 48 hours. And that's the time of ovulation. So ovulation is the time where our egg is sitting there. And so that's the most fertile time in the month. So that's the time where it is most common that we can get pregnant because our egg is there, it's sitting in the uterus, it's waiting for the sperm, and it's a mature egg. So it's sitting there and waiting. So about 2 days, and it can stay there as a mature egg for about 2 days or 48 hours. After those 2 days, the next stage is the next 12 to 14 days. And that is a time, so if the egg is not fertilized during that time, 2 days, it has about 2 days, and there's a little bit more nuance, but for simplicity, we'll just say 2 days. If it's not fertilized during that time, then the egg, it absorbs itself. It absorbs back into the body because we didn't need it. We didn't use it. So it absorbs back into the body. And during that, though, during the next 14 days is when we have our period. So during that time, the egg is there. So we talked about ovulation where our egg is ready. But if the egg gets ready to be fertilized, it also has to have something to grow on. And so during those first 14 days, the body's also developing this inner lining, blood lining, so that if the egg is fertilized, it has something that can like a nice cushiony pillow to kind of grow on. And that's that like thick blood lining that the egg really needs to, once it's fertilized, to grow into a pregnancy. If we don't get pregnant during those 2 days, we'll say 2 days, the body doesn't need that blood anymore and it doesn't need the egg anymore. And so the egg gets absorbed or dissolved, and then we have to get rid of that blood that the body built up over time. And that's what our period is. So that blood has to come out of the body. And that's what comes out during the last 14 days. And so that's why we have a period.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive look. I've been having periods for a long time, and I have known some of these things. I'm going to tell y'all, just fun fact, when I was younger, I would look to see if I could see the egg. Like, I never knew.
You're like,
that
where is it?
I'm like, surely it's here. Where is it? So that is a fun fact that I never knew, and I really appreciate now knowing that, and just kind of the purpose of the thickening and the purpose of the bleeding and the purpose of all of that. So thank you. I have kind of a two-part question. Just thinking about I'll keep it to one part. Thinking about, for years and years, we've been hearing like, oh, she must be PMSing, or they must be PMSing, or this is this and this is that. Can we talk a little bit about some of the signs? What is PMS really? And what are some of the signs and symptoms that people could look out for if they're not? Because I know I shared with you all before that after having my daughter is when I started to realize symptoms of ovulation. And my mom is a doctor, so she was like, oh, that's happening because you're probably ovulating. And it never even dawned on me that that was the case. And now I'm super hyper aware of, oh, okay, that's okay. That little twinge or that little, whatever is ovulation or whatever. And so can you talk about one, PMS, and two, kind of the signs of ovulation that people could be looking for?
Yeah, I love that you brought this up. Like hormones are a real thing, right? And hormones affect all of our bodies, whether we are male identified, female identified, whether we mostly have male hormones or female hormones. Hormones affect all people's bodies, and the hormones not only affect how our bodies work on the inside, how our organs work on the inside and on the outside, it also affects our mood. And so I want to just normalize the feelings that we feel during the menstrual cycle as a very healthy part of how the body works, and that people who don't have menstrual cycles and don't have periods also feel different feelings because how hormones affect their bodies. Testosterone in in male presenting bodies, and also bodies that have male sex hormones and male sexual organs also have different feelings during different times of the life cycle. So I really appreciate this question. I just really want to normalize the feelings that we feel during the menstrual cycle, because they are very healthy, and it's a healthy and common part of our menstrual cycle, and just the female cycle. And so when we think about PMS, so PMS stands for premenstrual syndrome. So the whole cycle, that super long thing I just went through, there are so many hormones that are involved in helping to bring the egg out of the ovary during ovulation. And one of the major hormones of that is estrogen. And estrogen affects our hormones in different ways. And so estrogen is one of the hormones during the pre-cycle, as we're about to ovulate, that can let us also know that, oh, I'm about to ovulate. Ovulation's on its way. And so some of the things that estrogen does to the body, it can make us have breast tenderness, because estrogen also impacts breast development. So estrogen helps the breast to also grow and develop and mature. And when every single month, or when we ovulate during our cycle, we get higher levels of estrogen. So we feel that in the breast tissue. So you might notice around the time that you're about to ovulate, you also have breast tenderness, which is also very common. So in order for the egg to come out, you have to have that surge of estrogen. The estrogen levels have to be high. And that's so it can turn on other hormones that help our egg to come out. The other very common hormone is called progesterone. So progesterone is the hormone that helps to both to what we call stabilize that cushiony blood pillow that we're also making during that time, in case the egg does get fertilized into a pregnancy. And so we want to make sure, while estrogen is helping to grow the egg and bring the egg out, and estrogen also helps that blood lining to get thick, we want to make sure that blood lining doesn't come out too soon. It has to stay in there and stay stabilized in order for pregnancy. And that's what progesterone does. So we call it stabilizing the uterus. So it helps to keep things stable, and so you don't bleed too early, in case you need that blood pillow for fertilization. So that's what progesterone does. But the other thing with progesterone, that hormone can also affect emotions. So we notice at the beginning part of the menstrual cycle, estrogen is high and progesterone is low. But then once we ovulate, it flips, where progesterone gets high and estrogen gets low. And with progesterone getting high, it can also make us feel more moody. Progesterone can also lower the emotions. It can make people feel more moody. It can make us feel a little bit low or down. And so sometimes we notice that during our period, because those hormone levels are now flipping. Progesterone's getting high, estrogen is getting low, and that happens during our period and into that next part of the cycle. And so we might notice that we might feel a little bit low or down, and that's because the progesterone levels are higher. And that also allows us, as the progesterone changes, for again that blood to come out. So again, as we feel, and I love that you said that, Brandy, because the more that we know and we understand the emotions behind some of the things that we're feeling, we understand that, oh, this is a natural and healthy part of my menstrual cycle, and yes, I'm feeling this, and I know that this will likely pass. And sometimes it may not pass. Sometimes the way the hormones affect our mood may feel too extreme for something that feels balanced for us every day. And so that's when we also want to talk to a trusted adult, talk to a medical provider, talk to a friend, if we are feeling like the hormones are causing our mood to be too extreme, where we're not able to get things done the way that we We'll most commonly get them done during the month. We don't feel good about ourselves in the way that we normally have feel, because that's also something that we also know that people experience, and that's called PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and that is can also be a form of mild depression that happens around the time of our menstrual cycle.
Wow. Can
Yeah.
I just say I am really enjoying myself right now. I love learning all these new things. And I'm noticing like a repetitive, intertwined like concept here of just really reflecting, knowing yourself, getting in tune with your feelings. Because it clearly goes a long way in all of these different processes. And for someone who is recently just got off of birth control and kind of relearning my period and menstrual cycle, I've been noticing like a lot of confusion with our in our community with like irregular bleeding in the menstrual cycle. So I would love to know like what should we know about spotting versus periods?
And also clotting. Can we talk about that too? Because
Oh yes,
that's
yes.
something that I think I'm very confused about.
I love that. I love that. And I love talking about like the irregular period, and also like also debunking the myths around our periods too, because I feel like we have been taught that there is one way to have a period, and
Mhm.
it happens at this age, and it happens for this many days, and this is how much you should bleed, and this is how you should feel, and anything that's aside from that is not normal, which is not a real thing, right? And so we know that there is a whole range of what the menstrual cycle should look like and does look like for everyone. And the version of normal is what our version, your own individual version of normal is. There are measures of what we as we monitor what is healthy versus things that may be unhealthy, but there is no one way around that word normal. So I'm going to stop saying that, because that's actually not a real thing. So it's like what is best and healthiest for our bodies, and making sure that that also stays aligned. And so we talk about the menstrual cycle and bleeding. And first of all, I love it. We talked about puberty, because puberty also again impacts our menstrual cycle, and we know that the hormones during puberty are for the child body type, both inside, outside, brain development, all the development developing into adulthood. And so that's why we even have those hormones of puberty. And those hormones are constantly going up and down as they get regulated, which means as they become more regular for the adult body and the adult mind and for adulthood. And so it is very common during puberty, which is usually during adolescence, so ages 9 to 11 to about age 26. So it's a pretty big, large period of time.
Yeah.
9, 10 to age 26 of time where our hormones are irregular, and that is the common way that this happens. And so they're supposed to go up and down because our bodies are also preparing for adulthood. So as the hormones are up and down, it also makes our period irregular. And so the regular period for adolescents is an irregular period. So I think that for most of us, who've gone through our adolescence, and for those of you all listening who are your teenagers now, you probably were like, oh, some month I get a period and some month I don't. That's right. And some month I might get two periods, and then I skip my period for 3 months and then it comes back. That is the common adolescent period. And that's because it's all responding to the hormones in the body, which are fluctuating, going up and down during adolescence. So what does that look like for periods? So what that could look like is 1 month you may get your period, and maybe it lasts for 4 days, and then you go on into the next menstrual cycle, and the next month you might skip a period because maybe that estrogen level didn't get high enough for the egg to come out, and you actually didn't ovulate that next month, and so you may not get a period the next month. And then maybe the next month you get another period, but maybe this time it lasts for 2 days. And maybe that's because during that menstrual cycle, the estrogen only got to the level where it only made the lining thick enough for a 2-day menstrual cycle. So again, those are all a part of the adolescent period. And so you may notice that sometimes you have heavier bleeding, sometimes you have lighter bleeding, and that is all very common. The other piece around clots, you mentioned, Brandy. So because we know our bodies, all of our bodies respond to hormones in different ways. Sometimes with estrogen, our body might respond where when those estrogen levels go up during the first part of the menstrual cycle, we actually make quite a thick, heavy pillow for that egg. And then for some bodies, their estrogen levels go up and they make a thinner pillow for that egg. But either way, when we bleed, the body wants to get rid of that blood. So sometimes the blood is heavier, and the longer that blood kind of sits, it can make clots. It can clot together. We know we want the blood to clot together, because that's also one way that we know that our body doesn't just bleed and bleed and bleed, but it actually clots and stops the bleeding. So usually when we see clots, it is more a sign of that there was heavy bleeding, or there was heavier levels of blood inside the uterus that needed to come out. And then once it came out, that heavier bleeding clot came together and clotted together. So that's a very common thing. The thing around clots, so clots in and of themselves are not dangerous. It usually is very common and often not something that is unhealthy. Where clots can be unhealthy or dangerous is if someone is bleeding too much and it makes them what we call anemic. I think a lot of us have heard about anemia. And so our body needs a certain amount of blood in the body, of course, to be healthy. And because blood also carries oxygen throughout our bodies. So we're not only breathing, so when we breathe in oxygen, it not only goes to our lungs, but it goes into our bloodstream and it feeds all the organs inside the body. And that is through our blood. So if we have lower blood levels, there's lower amounts of oxygen that can get around to the body. So if you are experiencing clots that feel like a lot to you, so again, that taking it back to how you feel, not around what feels right for someone else. If it seems like it's not normal for you, then that's when you want to talk to a medical provider. Go talk to your medical provider, talk to a friend, make sure you're seen by a trusted healthcare provider who can talk to you more about the clots.
That's all super duper helpful. Just because, again, the rise of social media, you see all these different things. It should be this shade of red. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's that shade of red for one day, and then it's a different shade of red for the other day.
Exactly.
So it's good on this day and it's bad on this day.
Right.
And and a clot should only be a size of a quarter or less. There's so much information that's going around that it's really hard to keep up with what is normal. So I love that you have repeatedly debunked normal. And also I love just thinking back to adolescence. There's so many things. Never once have I, or others, my peers or whoever, been told, to my knowledge, that it's a hormonal thing, right? It's always, oh, you must be stressed. You must be stressed about that test. You must be this. You must be that. Maybe you're just infertile, right? And we hear that a lot too. Is, oh, I grew up thinking I was infertile because I barely ever had periods when I was younger, or things like that. And so just to know that the ebbs and flows are hormonal, and that is just kind of a part of development. It's a part of the body's way of doing what it needs to do, is really helpful. And I hope that it's helpful for other people too, because there's just so much around. Like, I have to have a period. If I miss the period, then I'll never have children.
How many
Or
days you bleed?
how
Yes,
many days? Yeah,
exactly.
it should only be a certain number of days. And this is this versus that. And cramping, if you have heavy cramping, it's this versus that. And I just think that realizing that someone's normal can be very different from someone else's normal.
Yes.
And that's what's normal, right?
Yes.
Whatever your normal
Yes,
is.
that's right. And remember that our bodies respond to it's a very natural thing, and development and maturing physically, it is all part of nature, and we try to put it into these very finite boxes, and the body doesn't work that way. So there is never one way of doing something. There's never one way that all bodies have to exist. There's never one way that all bodies exist internally or externally. So if you're having a conversation with a medical provider, and they are telling you that there's only one way, talk to another medical provider, because that is not how the body works. And I'm saying that as a medical provider, talk to another medical provider, because that is not the way the body works. The body is it's a very natural, organic process. And so that's why we see ranges. And it really is what is healthy for you. There are some things that are out of the realm of what is healthy. And so that's why it's really important to talk to a provider if you're seeing a difference, or if all of a sudden there's a big shift for you, because that's out of the range for you, or if you have never experienced something that is part of a common part of puberty, that might be something to talk to your medical provider about. But again, there's a large range. And so anytime we're hearing something where this very like finite, it has to be this way or it's not correct, that is often misinformation. So that can be really helpful, especially as we're seeking information on social media. We know social media is a really common tool for young people. It's a very powerful tool for young people to receive information. It's something that I really encourage for young people. And I encourage young people to know trusted sources in the digital space. So Dream Youth Clinic, we have a very large digital health education platform where we talk about health topics. You can go to our TikTok, our Instagram. Yup also has a really large presence on Instagram and on TikTok. So there is Bedsider that also has a large presence as well. So we also know, there are trusted sources, and go to those trusted sources on social media to find health information.
Yes.
That's so great. I have a question. So this just sparked. I have a double question because it kind of ties into the question I have. So for one, something that I've heard like all my life, and I never really heard it from adults. It's usually like peers that I hear it from, is that people who are like close to you or similar, usually you share like the same period dates or period cycle. I'm curious, is there any truth in that? And then my second part is kind of like your thought process on like period tracking apps, like especially within, young parents and the youth who are still developing.
Yeah, I love that. I love these questions. And so like we've heard this. I've heard it too, and I heard it all growing up. And like you also hear like you might have a roommate, and then all of a sudden you all's period is like syncs
Yeah.
up just a few months later. And this also speaks to the fact that like we are also a part of nature. Right. So it's also like bodily development and body cycles is a very organic natural process, in as much as it also is very scientific. We know there's science and physiology. It's all hand in hand. They're not separate things. They go like this. And so we know that hormones are inside the body, but there are hormones like pheromones. There are also different types of chemicals and sensors between people as well. We know that there are pheromones around intimacy and connection, and that there are different types of intimacy and connection. We know there's romantic intimacy and connection, pheromones, external sensors. We also know that there are connection and intimacy around partnership, friendship, love, pheromones, connection. And so we know that is a very real thing. So you might notice if you have a roommate and they also have a uterus, and they also have that in a few months, your periods do sync up, because again, those external pheromones, sensors, connections as well. So that is a very real thing. It's happened to me so many times. I have a sister, and she and I shared a room like our entire life. And like when we were in teenagers, we literally had our periods at the same time. So, and also when I spend time with her, like during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time with her. It sunk right back up. So again, like the pheromones and those external sensors are a very, very real part of science and nature and development as well. And then around trackers, so period trackers. I love that we have independent information and access for young people to learn about their bodies independently, especially as we are seeing information being shifted and changed for young people. We want to make sure young people continue to have accurate information and can have it at their fingertips as well. So I love different types of trackers that young people can use for health information, and specifically for period trackers, we want to it's really important that young people also know that because they are in adolescence, that time where puberty, the hormones of puberty are often fluctuating, going up and down throughout the month, across the months, that it also impacts the period. And so you will likely not have that very stable, trackable period that you can rely on every single month, like through a period tracker, because our periods really depend on the stability or how much of the hormone is in our bloodstream during that time. And during adolescence, it goes up 1 month, down 1 month, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, a little bit higher, 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 lower, lower, lower. And that can be much harder for a period app to track, which focuses on the same steady baseline of hormone from month to month.
Yeah.
So that would be my only sort of caution around relying on period trackers to know when you're ovulating, because of how the hormones affect our periods during adolescence.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some things, as we talk about tracking, some things that can help for a young person to know, like maybe my period is about to come, is to sense how they feel around the time of their period, to try and see their own natural patterns. So maybe making it a period diary. And so which could start with, okay, on the first day of your period, how are you feeling? And like connect that to your feelings and emotions. And then thinking back, and then trying to think a few days before your period started. Like, oh, am I having breast tenderness? Am I feeling it? How are my feelings, especially around the breast tenderness? And am I having like any type of cramps or any like twinge in my belly? Anything that might be letting me know that like sometimes people can feel ovulation pain. That can happen usually a bit late, sometimes later as you're menstruating in like maybe late 20s, early 30s, but it can happen earlier too. So just trying to like hone in on how your body feels. And then there's also something around cervical mucus. So this is also something that you can try and track. But again, you want to get the information about your body first. So usually during the time of ovulation, when the egg is there sitting, it is the time that the body wants to welcome being pregnant if someone wants to be pregnant. So the body makes it very favorable for you to be pregnant if you want to be pregnant. And so the cervical mucus is also called discharge. So we know that word discharge very well. So sometimes, and we know that our discharge also changes throughout the month, which is also natural and a part of the natural cycle, ovulation cycle. So you will notice that your discharge can either be thicker, it can be watery, it can be like kind of ashy like, and it cycles through. And then some days you might not have any discharge at all. And that is part of your cycle. But we notice that during ovulation, during that time where it's very favorable for pregnancy, the discharge becomes very thin and almost ashy-like. And that is also, again, to be able to help so like there's no barrier for the sperm to be able to get to the egg. During the time where our discharge is very thick, well, that's also a barrier. So that's usually a time where it's not as favorable. Usually you're not ovulating during that time. So people can also track their cervical mucus to know, or cervical discharge that we see that can help around knowing your most fertile days, which are the days that you're ovulating.
Yeah. I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes like one, thank you as always. I think, again, just normalizing that, right? There's so much around, and it's so frustrating being in a body that has these systems and having the society say, it should be this way, it should be that way. And there's so much around discharge and all the things. I think that's like a part two, part three,
That's right.
conversations. There's so much
Discharge is
there.
normal. Discharge is
Yes.
healthy. We want discharge.
Yes. Which again, it's so so good for us to know. And I think even going back to the period tracking, I think just thank you for giving voice to it, because sometimes I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but using the tracker and then you get this thing, has your period started? And then it's like, oh, frantic, no, it hasn't. Wait, let me, this, why are you yelling at me?
Right.
So just realizing that any sort of fluctuation can be happening, and just because technology and AI and all the things are up and coming doesn't mean that it knows the intricate parts of your body and what's kind of happening around you and all of that. And
It's
I really,
also not unhealthy to have a period. It's also not unhealthy to skip your period. Like, you don't have to have a period every month. That's also a myth. You do not have to have a period every month.
yeah,
So a period app tracker saying, "Oh my gosh, did you get your period?" or like, "Did you get your period?" is also just, it's a very kind of medicalized scientific thing that has no clinical um, has no clinical significance in its like purest sense. You
mm,
do not have to have a period every month in order to be healthy. So that's also something really important. I want young people to like remember, but it's important to know why you're not getting a period. Am I not getting a period because I might be pregnant? So that's something you want to know, right? But like, not just because, oh, period showed up or didn't show up, but like, why are we not having a period?
hmm hmm yeah. That's also something I never knew. I mean, again, all I ever knew was you must be stressed. I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I'm always stressed. I feel like
Right.
since I learned the word stressed, I was stressed. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm like, I don't think I'm that stressed to just, so, and also that it doesn't mean that, I'm in my 20s and I didn't have a period. That means that I'm entering menopause or something. Like, I think
Right.
that the brain goes all these places because of the information input that we get. And just to say that that is normal. And if your normal starts to kind of be concerning, then talking to your healthcare provider or to a trusted provider about those things is um, great. And also, I love that little nugget that you put, like, of getting another provider, right? We try and talk about that a little bit on Yup, and we're trying to more of that. It's okay to change. It's okay to change your
Yes.
mind. It's okay to find someone new if you're not feeling like you're getting your answers or your needs met or you're not feeling hurt. That's also okay to find someone who does those things for you. So I appreciate that. I feel like we've had a really robust conversation. And I know we wanted to talk a little bit about birth control, but truthfully, I feel like that deserves its own space. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, but I also think that there's a space here where if we want to spend a little bit of time talking about like those natural family planning methods, like kind of like what you just talked about, we maybe brought up breastfeeding an as a method that people have heard about as far as birth control, or again, you sort of start speaking about the natural family planning method. I think that if you would like, we could maybe
Yes.
go there and talk about that a little bit, and then really dive into birth control in another
Maybe a part
episode.
two. We have to do
Come
a
back,
part
part
two.
two.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We can also ask more questions. We can get more questions,
Yes.
specific questions that young people might have about birth control.
Yes.
And I love what you said just around like, I want to just like highlight and just reaffirm the piece around young people choosing another provider if you are not feeling like your questions are not answered by your provider, or you're not maybe understanding what they might be saying, or you feel like you're not being heard. So like, and again, this is coming from someone who is a provider. I'm a physician, and I recommend always going to another provider if you are not feeling heard by your provider. One thing that we highlight and we really talk so much about at Dream Youth Clinic is around reproductive justice. And part of reproductive justice is bodily autonomy, and it is being able to make your own decisions about your reproduction. And in order to make decisions about our reproduction, whether we want to have children, whether we don't want to have children, having support and access to parent our children in healthy and safe communities, in order to do that, we have to have information, and we have to feel heard, and we have to feel seen. And that includes for young people, that includes young parents, young families, young mothers. And so, and I want all of our young people listening who are here, listening to this, also to know that your inner voice is the truth. That is what's telling you the truth. And so if your inner voice is saying, hey, I just feel like this provider is not listening to me, or like they answered my they said something but they didn't answer my question, or I asked for this and they told me I have to do that, then you need to talk to another provider and trust yourself, because you are the one who's in the driver's seat. It is about you making decisions, and the providers are there to be facilitators and you getting into the choices that you decide, not the ones that we decide. So I just want to uplift that again, and thank you for bringing that up, Brandy. And as we think about, and so there's so many choices around our fertility and how we want to manage that, how we want to manage our fertility, how we want to choose when we want to be pregnant and when we don't want to be pregnant. And one of those ways is in something they call natural family planning methods. I'll just say, like, whatever family planning method we use is natural for us. So using medication is also very natural. It's just whatever is natural for us. So this is more like non-medical or non sort of external medication or Western medication methods. And so there are different ways of doing that. And one popular way that young people and adults often use after pregnancy is the breastfeeding method. And so this is called the lactation amenorrhea method, or LAM, LAM method. And so that basically means no period after birth, because you are breastfeeding. So that's basically breastfeeding, and so you're not having a period. And so this is a very effective method if it's done correctly. And that is really, really important. The if it's done correctly portion is very important. And so we know that, and so the body, again, is very smart, very natural, and sets us up for to be able to care for ourselves and to be able to care for our children if we are breastfeeding. And so if you are 100% breastfeeding, so this is breastfeeding breastfeeding the baby at the breast. So not just pumping, and not bottle feeding breast milk. So actually at the breast with all feeds. So this is every time the baby feeds. It actually can be used up to 6 months. So if we take it back, when you're breastfeeding, the body then knows this is not the best time to become pregnant, because you've recently had a child, you're breastfeeding the child, and often the same hormones that support pregnancy do not support the breast milk to come down to feed for feeding. So those are usually not that those hormones can often be what we call in opposition. They don't support each other. And so when the body knows if you are actively and almost 100% breastfeeding, it will stop your ovulation. So that means it makes it so your egg does not come out of the uterus. But this has to be with all feeds, so meaning that you're breastfeeding the baby every single time, and you have protection for up to about 6 months, of protection for if you with 100% breastfeeding. So this is really important because, again, you want to make sure that you're breastfeeding 100%. That means every single time the baby feeds, you're breastfeeding. So that means baby to the breast, because in addition to the hormones that help to make milk, there's also other hormones that when the baby's actually feeding from the breast that also help to stop ovulation. If those and you must be breastfeeding at least every 3 hours, every 3 to 4 hours. So even if the baby's getting fit, so usually if you're breastfeeding anyway, you're usually breastfeeding the baby at least every 3 to 4 hours. But I just want to say that because it can't be like every 5 hours or every 6 hours, because again, those hormones have to be cycling in your body continuously. And that's what helps to stop the ovulation. And that can be effective for about up to 6 months. But again, that's breastfeeding every single time, at least every 3 to 4 hours at maximum. And that's breastfeeding 100% of the time.
Okay. So because the saying also kind of goes is that even if your period doesn't come back, because many people don't experience a period while breastfeeding.
Yes.
But they still can ovulate and get pregnant.
Yes. So thank you for saying that. So yes. So if you're not breastfeeding, or if you're not breastfeeding regularly, so sometimes moms might start to breastfeed maybe the first month or second month, and maybe like by month three, maybe they're breastfeeding just at night, or they're pumping mostly, and then they're giving breast milk through the bottle. So that would not qualify for the lactation birth control. So that way you would not be covered for not getting pregnant during that time just from breastfeeding. There's another also time, which I think you're also talking about, Brandy, is that like sometimes you just may not get a period. Your period, it takes a while for it to come back regularly after you have a baby. And so it can be confusing, like, well, I haven't had a period this month. Am I pregnant? I'm not really sure. And so that, again, the hormones are kind of going back to its natural, what your natural cycle was before you got pregnant. And so that can take a while for it to re-regulate and regulate back to your ovulation. But it doesn't mean you don't ovulate. You still might ovulate and not have a full period, or you often sometimes can have some spotting after delivery, and that can last for weeks as well. So you're not really sure, is this a period or was this just spotting? And again, because the hormones are fluctuating, sometimes you may get spotting that's not actually ovulation. And so the most so we always say, if you are 100% sure that you do not want to get pregnant during a certain period after pregnancy, it's really important to be on birth control, because your hormones are fluctuating so much. It's very hard to regulate and know whether you're pregnant or not, because you missed a period or because of your period, or did the period come, because it can just be very different. Unless you are using the lactation method where you're breastfeeding every single time and 100% of the time. Other than that, we always recommend either using a hormonal version of birth control, or using condoms every time with Plan B, so the morning after pill, if you need that.
Wow. This was such an educational and like so empowering conversation. And I think kind of closing off where we're at now really will take us into our part two, because we have
Yes.
so many more questions for you on specifically birth control, vaginal health, STI, STDs, and fertility. But before we close off, I wanted to know if you have any last nuggets or gems for our audience. And lastly, sorry to add something else, but for those young parents and youth around the world who may not have access to medical care or a medical provider, what are some reliable and safe ways that they're able to still, get, care and support?
Yes, I'll answer your last question first. So I think I love this question. So reliable ways. So it is so important for us to have trusted health information that we can rely on, that adults can rely on, and that young people can rely on. It is only with trusted and accurate health information that we're able to make the healthiest decisions about our body and our health and our families. So I really encourage us to have trusted and accurate sources of information, and also access to that. So I want to give a couple of digital resources that you all can use. So internet and social media is a great place to tap in, because you can do it privately. If you have it on your phone, be able to just get online on your phone. You can get to the library to do that, using a trusted friend's phone to get on. So you can have a really private and trusted space to go, and also now knowing where to go. So I would say Dream Youth Clinic. So we are on Instagram and TikTok. We post health information videos there. We also have a YouTube page for our youth-centered podcast as well, called Dream Teen Talk. So that's Dream Youth Clinic, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Please reach out to us. We are always posting health information videos. If you have a question about your health, you can also send us a DM, and we will answer your question as well. We also have a telemedicine platform. So if you need to be seen by a medical provider and you don't know where to go, you can send us a message, send us a DM, and we will make a telemedicine appointment with you to see one of our providers through a video visit. Another place, I'm going to say Yup. So Yup also has a really amazing platform online, a really amazing website with so many videos supporting young parents with information, health information, life information as well. This podcast is also on their website as well, and they also have Instagram and TikTok. So I would definitely use Yup as a resource. Third, I would say is Bedsider. So Bedsider is a resource that is around birth control, contraception, getting more information about details around birth control and be able to see the different things. And I know we're going to have a part 2 where we'll talk more about birth control, but Bedsider is a really great place on TikTok, Instagram, and they also have a great website, Bedsider. That's one word. And the last one I'll say for health information is Amaze, AMAZE. It's run by Advocates for Youth. It's a health information platform on TikTok, Instagram. They also have a website, and they have lots of videos, animated videos about sexual health, about healthy relationships, body positivity, being able to look through scenarios, and helping with trusting that inner voice that we already know. So those are 4 great resources I would have you all go to. Also, the last one for access to health services, Dream, we're always a resource. The other I'm going to say is Planned Parenthood. So most states have a Planned Parenthood in your state or in your city. And so that's also a really great place. You can usually just drop into a Planned Parenthood. If you can't be seen that day, they usually will set you up with an appointment to be seen. So I would go to your local Planned Parenthood. Yeah. And the last part of your question, Divine, is around trusting ourselves. Around my last kind of words I would say to young people is trust your inner voice. Yeah. That is your truth. Yeah. That is your truth. More than what a medical provider tells you, more than what your friends experience with something. Trust your experience and bring that experience into the exam room. Share that experience with your medical provider. Say, hey, this is what happened and this is how I'm feeling. What do you think about that? Or how can I make a decision based on how I feel? Especially, again, going back to the beginning of this conversation around sexual readiness, trust your inner voice around whether you feel ready to have sex right now and making sure that you feel ready every single time you have sex. Even if you had sex with that person in the past, you should feel ready every single time. And your inner voice is always going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yes, really quick. You had mentioned health appointments with the Dream. Do you have to be a local resident, and do you have to have health insurance?
So you do have to be a California resident, and you do not have to have health insurance. So right now we are able to see all California residents through our telemedicine portal. We will be expanding that in 2026 to other states, and you do not have to have health insurance to be seen. It's all free care.
Awesome. Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. And all of the resources that Dr. Mays mentioned, we do have on the Yup website. We also have search locators as well for like the Planned Parenthoods. So yeah.
And I'll link them. I'll put everything in the description. So that'll be easy. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for having me. I love this conversation. I can't wait to you all. I mean, I love this conversation. Great questions. I love this conversation, and I can't wait for part 2.
Yes, let's get it on the books.
We're not done here.
Yeah, we're not done.
Okay, y'all. Until next time.
Until next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Dream Youth Clinic is a dynamic, creative, and innovative youth-led and youth-inspired organization dedicated to serving the most vulnerable youth of the Bay Area and beyond. The Young Mothers Rising program moves our young mothers from the fringes to the center by creating a space where young motherhood is empowered, celebrated, and supported. Young Mothers Rising supports the empowerment of young mothers by providing robust, youth-centered family resources, including a bi-weekly Young Mothers Educational Support Group, Basic Needs Resourcing, Young Mother-Friendly Employment Opportunities, and a Young Mothers Rising Community Fund. For more information, check out their website and follow them on all social media platforms. And as always,
if you enjoyed the Yup podcast, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment.
And visit youngunitedparents.org for the information, community, and resources young moms and dads need to thrive.